Welcome to Unity Inspired Living. Our community began in 1989 as a small worldwide Unity book study group, and we've continued the momentum as an ever-evolving spiritual community. Each Sunday, you will find dynamic thought leaders delivering inspiring messages and talented musicians sharing sound healing through their melody. Here, we embrace ancient spiritual traditions, universal truths, and emerging wisdom. Let's check out this Sunday message. We're so grateful you've joined us. Might be waiting to be discovered, and it is my great joy to leave the rest of that exploration to Christopher Brown. So please join me in welcoming this wonderful human being who is talking today about finding light in the darkness. Thank you, Christopher Brown. We're grateful for you.
So good to be back, and I wish I could all see you in person, but I can imagine you, I can feel you here. Finding light in the darkness. You know, you've heard the story. Well, there's always a silver lining, and look for the gold and in the darkness. And and I want to tell them to just shut up. I'm not going for it. That's like, it's too much work. This is hard. If I'm in grief or if I'm in chronic pain, I don't want to hear that. But that's exactly what I need to hear. And as my good friend Daryl would say, you've got to suck it up. It's like, and that's kind of what this is about. It's like, how do we live when we're in the darkness? And how not to be consumed by it, and where to look to find the light. Well, Bob Marley, and we just heard, Bob Marley talks about, you never know how strong you are until being strong is your only choice. I mean, I heard that, I'm like, wow, okay. You never really know how capable and how amazing you are until you have to be it, until you're forced to be it by grief, by pain, by suffering, by loss. So where do we go from here? Where do we find the light? And sometimes it has to come from the outside. Sometimes you have to generate it by yourself, and you won't know. And there was a story of the little brother and the sister was 16 and the brother was 13, and they were having to go on a road trip to see their auntie somewhere. And the sister had just had been dumped by her boyfriend, and she was a dark cloud raining all over the car. And so here they're stuck in this 4-hour drive with a family, and she is feeling horrible. And she's gently sobbing, and they're both in the back seat against the window. And the little brother, who's not so little anymore, they don't get along very well. So there's no real kindness there most of the time. But today was different. Today, the brother reached over and took his sister's hand and just held it. Didn't say a word. Nobody else in the car knew it. It was just between them. And that's the beauty right there of we're not alone. And that's sometimes when the light comes from the outside through a hand, just a gentle touch, reminding us that we're not alone in this life. So I want to say that darkness has no real power. There's nothing in darkness but what we bring to it. And what we bring to it is our mind and our stories and our fears and our upbringing and our childhood. All of that. We bring that to the darkness. And it scares us. It scares us a lot. And so when we have that reminder to either find the light within us or to receive light from the outside is so, so important. Now, when my dad died, he was my best friend. And I was thrown into some grief that I had no idea existed. And my mom would call me up in the morning to remind me how she was grieving. And we would both cry on the phone together. And this would happen almost every morning. She would wake up and call me. And I know that I provided that light for her so that she could make it through the day. But it was also a reminder of how I was grieving. And so it triggered me every morning too. And I would go into this grief. And one morning I said, enough. What is the bottom of this? Where is this coming from? What is grief? What is this? And it was this curiosity that just took me over, and I said, damn it, I'm not getting out of this bed until I know. And so I laid down, put the pillow over my head, and I went in. What is this feeling? Can I touch it? What is this feeling? Where does it come from? And the more I looked, the darker it got, the scarier it got, but at the same time, the calmer and more quiet everything got. It's like the mind, in its curiosity, just sort of settled down. And what I discovered was I couldn't find it. And something popped. And what popped was the gratitude. I know that sounds corny, but it was like only the remembrance of my dad every time he came to the motorcycle races and he would drive me there, the times we rebuilt cars together and we went to all of the different races and everything we did in traveling together. I mean, I missed that, but there was a sweetness now, as opposed to the loss, something flipped. It's like you see a glass half empty or half full. What is the mind telling me? The mind was telling me I had a huge loss. I was alone. Now the mind was telling me I had incredible memories and I had his heart with me at all times. And that shift was amazing. That's, in a sense, kind of bringing the light into your own darkness. There's the story of the farmer. And I know many of you have heard the story, where he had this beautiful white horse. And the king came to him and said, I want to give you tons of money for this horse. It's the most beautiful horse I've ever seen. And the farmer said, no, I love this horse. It's not for sale. Well, the townspeople heard that and came up to the farmer and said, oh, you silly man, you could be rich. You wouldn't have to cut wood with your son for a living. Why didn't you take them? No, I can't. What you don't understand, townspeople, is that we don't know the full story. We don't know if that offering from the king was a blessing or a curse. Only time will tell. And the townspeople said, yeah. And they took off. Well, a week later, the horse disappears. It's gone, run away. The townspeople came back. See, we told you so. Yeah. The farmer said, we don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. Only time will tell. And the townspeople went off and said, yeah. Well, another week went by and the horse returns, and this time with 5 beautiful mares. And the townspeople said, wow, I guess we didn't know what was going to happen, because look what's happened now. Great fortune has befallen. You have 4 or 5 new horses, and they could be pregnant, and you could have a whole flock. I mean, now you're going to be really rich. And the farmer said, you haven't got it yet. We don't know if this is a blessing or a curse. Only time will tell. Well, it wasn't but a week later. Well, the son was riding one of those horses, trying to get it, trying to train it. The horse throws him, the son breaks his leg. Townspeople come back again and said, oops, now what are you going to do? Because you got to chop wood and he's your best worker. You know, what's going to happen now? And so, you know, what's the farmer's going to say? We don't know if this is a blessing or a curse. Only time will tell. Well, as it worked out, another month later, the king was under attack and they were going to war. And soldiers showed up at the farmer's door. Well, they couldn't take the son because he had a broken leg. The townspeople said, oh, what great fortune. He won't have to go to war. Aren't you happy? And he said, and this is the teaching part, we don't know, but we jump to conclusions that this is a blessing or a curse. We just throw it into one of those two boxes when only time will tell. What if we were to withhold our judgment about what's happening? When the darkness hits, we don't know if this darkness is a blessing or a curse. We don't know if grief or if this chronic pain is a blessing or a curse. Only time will tell. I know if I look back at my 15 years of chronic back pain, I can look at it from over here and say, damn, that was a blessing. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I would not want to repeat it. It was hell. It was absolute hell. But what I learned from it was the gold. And so it's been said that you can't know light until you really know darkness, until you've been brought to your knees really into the darkest of places. And when you pop out of that, you know light for the first time. And, you know, I didn't realize that, I didn't know that, you know, how that was until I got out of the draft. I didn't realize that, you know, when I was finally drafted, you know, I stayed in college to get out of drafted, and I was always worried they're going to get me, they're going to get me, they're going to get me. I graduated, they got me. I go into downtown Oakland, and there I am with all of these scared young men. And I had a letter from a doctor, and I hoped that was going to be enough. And it was. And I walked out of there, and I had never seen downtown Oakland look so beautiful, or the light on the street's been so beautiful. It was like, I get a second chance at life. I don't have to go to war and kill people. And it was like, wow. And so, and that wasn't a super dark place, but it was dark. It was a long 4 years of this weight being on my back was lifted. And so as we come to know the dark places, we also come to know the light, and we're more grateful for what we have because we've known the other side. We're more grateful for people in our lives because we've known the darkness. And I was talking to Daryl, my good buddy, and he says, what are you talking about? I'm talking about, you know, darkness. And I said, tell me your story about being shot. He says, okay. He said, but I want the teaching aspect of it. Okay. So I'll skip to it. He was in Vietnam. He was 19 years old. He's ambushed in a field. He's shot in the throat and he's bleeding out. And he's in a paddy all by himself. And he's looking up at the sky saying, you know, this is how I'm dying. This is where I die. And blacked out. Later, he wakes up in a hospital bed in this room with other soldiers that had been blown up also. They were all recuperating. And he said, he'll never forget the man next to me. His name was Sergeant Strong. And he looks over at me and he says, good job, kid. You made it. You're going to be okay. And he said, that was so comforting. That was the first words that I really heard. was, yeah, you're going to make it. You're going to be okay. That was the light that he saw in his darkness there. But he didn't know darkness until the convalescing, the 5 months of staring at the ceiling. There's no television. It's just staring at the ceiling, hoping you're going to get better. But in that time, something shifted. And what kept him alive was knowing that Sergeant Strong, his words at the very beginning, and that he wanted to return to his family and friends. And they were writing him letters. And that was amazing. When he would receive a letter, it was like a blinding shot of light and of hope. So important. Well, one day, Sergeant Strong says, I want you to feel my leg. See if you can scoot around, and I want you to squeeze my leg. He said, no, it's no funny business. So Daryl says, okay. And he goes down and he feels his leg and he says, squeeze it harder. Okay, put your fingernails into it. Really bite me down hard. I feel nothing. He says, oh shit. So he calls the nurse and they take him away. About a week later, he writes him a letter. The letter comes to Daryl and he says, they took my leg. I'm okay now. I'm going to be all right. You don't need to worry about me. And I want to tell you, you're going to be okay too. Kid, you're doing good. Okay. So these are the stories of kindness we can do for other people. And how long did it take Sergeant Strong to write that letter? How long? And what impact it had on Daryl. And this gave him amazing hope. And he was no longer bitter about what happened to him. He was bitter about his naivety, about buying into the myth that the government this was a righteous war, that war was for heroes, and that war was somehow, no, war is hell. There is no reason for it whatsoever. And he became an activist after that. And here he had enlisted, and now he was an activist. Basically, he grew up and awakened to what was going on, and this was the gold for him. And the other part of the gold is he made a movie called The Bonus Years. And this is a movie meant for friends, and all of us starred in it. And he had this big showing where there was like 60 of his friends came to see this movie about what it's like to have not only survived, but how important it was to have friends and family in your life, your support system. Amazing. And so you think about it, Rumi talks about this. Rumi says, the wound is the place where the light can enter. And Daryl was certainly wounded. He was brought to his knees. He thought this was the end. And then the long recovery and trying to reintegrate back to life, where life didn't seem the same anymore. It seemed like where he came from was much more real than this. These were the sunny days, and he still hadn't been able to accept the sunny days. And that took years to really accept and to let go of the post-traumatic trauma of all this. That it really is okay to have sunny days, to enjoy your sunny days. He was humbled in a way that I'll never know. And he also knows the light now in a way that I'll never know because of that. So the light can come from the outside sources, like from Sergeant Strong, or we can bring our own light to it. And there was a story about Starbucks in New York where this drive-through, And this was like a record. The drive-through, the first person started it in the morning and paid for the person behind. Not only paid for themselves, but they paid for the person behind. The next driver comes up and they say, hey, your coffee's been paid for by the person who just left. You can't thank them, but something about that kindness stuck. It really stuck. And so they said, hey, I'll pay for the guy behind. And they did. 378 cars, and they didn't break the cycle. That's a record. That's how much kindness is out there. And they kept passing it on, passing it on. And it only took one person to break the chain. How fragile it is, but how prevalent it is when we experience it, and we want to pass it on. I know that's happened to me, and I know it's probably happened to you many times when someone's paid for your meal or your bridge toll or something, and you went, wow, kindness exists, light exists in the most unexpected places. Well, I'm going to finish with this story, and it's one of my favorite stories. And it's about the emperor. And the emperor was very wise, and he wanted to have a painting made that would remind him that this too shall pass. That whatever darkness that he would enter in, that he could find a picture that he could go to and look at, and it would snap him out of his story. Because it really is the story that scares us. It's our story of being alone and just helpless. So he sent out to the whole kingdom, I want all of the painters to paint a picture, and whoever gives me the best picture, the picture that can snap me out of my story, you get a big prize, lots of whatever. So the painters went to work, and this old woman up on the hill, very wise, the news came to her, and she said, oh, I know how to do this, because she had known darkness. She knew what to paint. And so she went about doing it. And when the day came, all of the paintings showed up in the great hall, and they were placed around the gallery. And the emperor went from one painting to the next. And these are beautiful paintings. I mean, beautiful scenery. You know, seascapes, mountains, beautiful light and clouds, and just really uplifting. And he kept saying, no, no, no. These are all sunny days. I need something else. The king and the emperor knew that we don't necessarily grow from our sunny days. It's our dark days where we grow the most. And there was only one dark painting in the corner, and that was the old woman's painting. And she was smiling as the emperor came closer and looked at her painting. And the emperor stopped, like he hadn't stopped in front of any of the other paintings, and stared at it, and was shaken by how ugly and dark and desperate it was. You see, there was lightning striking in this dark, stormy night with wind blowing leaves against this waterfall that was raging, this torrent of water. And right next to that waterfall was a tree. And under the branch of the tree, as the emperor looked closely, you could see a baby bird. And the baby bird had the wings out and was shielding her chicks from the storm. And the emperor shouted, this is the one, by far, this is the best painting I've ever seen. And what makes it so special is it's so ugly and it's so beautiful at the same time. That in the midst of it, there is hope and there is love. And that's what I need in my darkest times. If you want to bring love into the darkness, you're going to have to know love. If you're going to, and you're going to have to be able to recognize it. Because it's when we bring love and kindness into our darkest nights, into our darkest times, that it gives us that hope. And it fills us with a generosity that we can share. And it's really sharing our generosity and our love that brings light into the world. And it really transforms the world. And so I simply close by saying and thinking about that baby bird and the mom that was enduring all of that darkness and that storm, and protecting at the same time. And that we can protect ourselves from the darkness by our days of remembered light. So when we recall our sunny days, those days will return. But we have to counter the story that says that they won't. And so I leave you with stay hopeful, stay loving, and there will be a new day. And you know there will be a new day. So I'm going to leave you with an affirmation. Today I accept equally my dark days and my sunny days. I vow to use every opportunity to share acts of love and kindness, knowing that I am being the change that I want to see. And so it is.
And so it is. Thank you, dear Christopher. Wow. I'm so grateful for you. What a beautiful reminder that finding light doesn't require us to deny the darkness. Sometimes it simply is asking us to remember that the darkness isn't the whole story, right? It's what you're speaking to right now, like just being able to remember those days of light and that they're accessible. And how I especially love the invitation you gave to recognize, our own capacity to bring light to a situation through something as accessible and powerful as kindness. And love and kindness is what you said. And it reminded, when you said that, I was thinking of the loving kindness. I think it's called a prayer, the compassion prayer, and how much we humans need each other for that hope and love in the darkest moments. And I'm appreciating that you spoke to that, because we so need each other, like Daryl and the Sergeant Strong, and how he made such a difference just by being there, just by showing up. And it seems small. And like you said, like, how long does it take to write a letter? Now we even shorter. How long does it take to send a text? Short, short. So, remembering that the light, the kindness that we have can touch so deeply and mean so much to somebody else. I'm so grateful for your share. And I love the reminder about the Starbucks. I didn't know the detail about the 378 cars. And, that does speak to people, core of people. And I always kind of come back to that. It's like the core of people, they're good. People want to divide and separate into, oh, you're in this category and you believe this and that. But the core is that when somebody's hurting or crying, we feel that. We have tears too. We can empathize. And I love how you pointed out, like, and how fragile it is to break that chain too, right? Because 378 cars, and then it seems so strong and robust, and then just one person, for whatever reason, and that's no judgment, right? Couldn't continue the chain. And so it's so the fragility and our humanness in general. Like, it's just so beautiful. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you, Christopher. I am so grateful for you. Let's check in with our chat and see what everybody is um, sharing. If you have a thought, a comment, a question, um, Pat says, I would paint the yin yang. Yeah, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that something though? The painting story is, I don't know, it resonates so deeply with me because I think as humans, we all understand the dark, the pain, whatever that pain might be, whether it's grief or chronic pain or what, we can empathize with our fellow humans. And so to see a picture that's just like, oh, I understand you. I understand that place where that picture painting came from. And so I appreciate that story too very much. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Pat. Marion says, I am that mama bird for my sons as my mama was for me. Yes, you are indeed. Beloved Marianne, you are that mama bird. Kathy says, thank you, Christopher, as always, a profound and heartfelt message. There is always light to be found in the darkness. Mm. We just have to look. We have to be willing to. Because, I think you said this too, Christopher, and Nancy's reading, it's like, what are we filling our minds with or minding our mind, going back to that. Um, if we're looking for I think I just put it in that, Kathy, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it went in this last newsletter. Um, that Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood talked about how when he was a kid, he'd watch the news and it'd be all this bad stuff happening in the world and he'd get real anxious and apprehensive. And his mom said, well, just don't, focus on that. Look for the helpers. Because when you look for the helpers, you'll find the helpers, and I thought, this is just such a basic lesson on minding the mind and what are you focusing on and where are you looking. And so even in the dark, and like you said, sometimes it can get dark in the dark. You can get buried, you can feel buried in the dark.
Yeah.
And that's why community and friends and family and people, other humans are so, so important. Um, Oh, I loved your sister, the story you first started with about the sister who got dumped and was crying. Just a gentle touch from the little brother who's probably usually, not so gentle and loving. Just a little touch saying, we're not alone in life, and that's really what this is about. Um, and your story about your mom calling you in every morning and after your dad passed, and taking a deep dive into that. Yes. Wow, so many beautiful stories that you brought to us this morning that I know have touched everybody because we all know the dark in one form or another. We've all experienced dark moments, dark times in our lives, and um, that's part of our shared humanity.
And we've survived, and we're here today. And some of us
Amen.
may be in that darkness right now, but we also know that the sun rises every morning, and we forget, and we get so stuck in our stories that this is the way it's always going to be. And it's not true. And I think we can bring light into our stories.
Yeah.
The boogeyman that used to be in your closet as a kid or under the bed or maybe in the basement, it was hiding somewhere. I know it is for everyone. It was for me. And I used to have to run into my room and jump onto the bed because the boogeyman was under the bed and he was going to get my legs every single time.
Every time.
So what if we had enough courage to look under the bed
Mm,
and to face the boogeyman? And that's what we're asked to do in the darkness. That's what I was asked to do with my dad in the grief
yeah.
and in the midst of my chronic back pain and all of that, is to really face it. What is the core of my suffering?
Yeah.
What is it? And the thing is when when we genuinely ask, we get an answer. And when we stick with it, it's like, I'm not moving until I get an answer. And I am that serious about this. And it's like you're informing the mind and you're informing all the stories that, you better get your act together because I'm not going anywhere. Papa's home and he's pissed. And,
Mm.
and we get, I will tell you, we get an answer. That's where the gold is, and you have to mine it. You
Mhm.
got to go picking and looking for it.
Yeah, because it's easy to stay wallowing in the dark. And I don't mean to condemn, like, I think there's a period of time where,
Oh,
depending on what we've gone through, we need to go through that. And yet it can be um extended. And so
oh,
that's when we time to look at what's going on, right? And I think I love what you said. This was very interesting because I wrote down face the boogeyman, and that's really it. It's like getting to it's like you feel so terrible and such just angst and everything. And but there's a part that doesn't want to go in, like you feel it, but it's like, do I really want to go into it even more to feel it? No, but that's where the gold is. And it's funny because
yep.
I wrote down face the boogeyman, but when I glanced down quickly back down at my paper, I saw free the boogeyman. Isn't that interesting? So we face
That's
the boogeyman to free the boogeyman.
Yeah. And
Isn't
where's the
that
boogeyman live? Not under the bed.
yes. Wow,
It's
such powerful stuff here. Nan says thank you. Yes, indeed. You know, I think that this is a really big piece, what you talked about, kind of having to dive into that after, so many mornings with your mom and grieving over your dad and at some point saying, this isn't because there is actually a word for it, like prolonged grief. But this isn't going to turn into something that just indefinitely this is how we live. So it does take that courage. I really think that courage in a way to say, I've got to I got to go into the dark all the way, and I'm already in the cave, but I'm going to go all the way to the end of the cave and find the boogeyman there and find out what is the root of what's the story that's going on, because only then can we really free it. If we don't really know what's keeping us captive, keeping a hook in us, then it might remain. So to say, okay, yes, I have this grief, but what does that mean? Well, yeah, my whole identity. And for your mom, it was different than you, life changed, identity changed, everything. It was like a book I read about grief once. Is like if you had a dining room table in the same spot for 30 years, even in the dark, you walk around it because it's been there for 30 years. You just sense where it is. And then all of a sudden you get a new table or you move it. Well, you're going to keep banging into it. It's like you have to figure out how to be now with this new table in the room. And
Mhm.
that's how any sort of grief is, or loss, or even chronic pain. It's like, now how do I operate my body differently? Because now I'm kind of moving around this thing that hurts, right? And so, um, yeah, finding light in the darkness.
and it sucks. It really sucks. And as Daryl would say, you've got to embrace the suck. You suck it up, soldier. And it's like, and we
Mm,
know what that means, and we hate it, and I hate it. But
yeah,
it's sometimes, as Bob Marley has said, you never know how strong you are until being strong is your only choice.
yeah,
You've really got to, this is it. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with this chronic pain or this grief? Well,
yeah, truth.
what's the next step? Are you going to survive this? Yes, we know we're going to survive. We just hate being in the moment with it. We
Right,
want we want it to change.
right,
And so
right,
that's where the story comes in. The story is it's never going to end. That's not
right,
true. It's just not true. It
right.
will, and it's constantly changing. Throughout the day, my grief would change.
Mm,
My pain would change throughout the day. I'd become distracted. And so how important that is too.
right.
Finding stuff that quiets the mind. And I don't mean meditation, because that usually is not what I want.
Yeah.
Because all I can feel when I go quiet is, everything's coming. Um,
Yes. Oh my goodness, yes. Oh,
but when I
so true.
when I'm outside and I'm experiencing the cats or joy or riding my bike or something like that, I forget about my story. That Christopher in that story disappears, and now it's just bike riding, and it's the
Mm,
action of the body. Or if someone is kind to me, it's like, whoa, I am stopped. It's those stopping points when I forget the chronic pain, I forget the grief, and I'm simply present. And so this teaches us presence, um,
yeah.
because that's where the relief is the more present I become to what's actually happening in the moment, you know,
Yeah.
the happier I am, or the
Yes.
less suffering there is.
Yeah. And I mean, and like we've talked about today, we forget, we can get bogged down, and then that's why
You
it's
know,
so helpful to have those those reminders in our lives. And those people who come along and say, "Hey, wait a minute, let's talk about what's going on here." So,
yeah.
thank you, Christopher. We are tremendously grateful for you and your genuine, sincere heart and what you bring to us. We're
Mm.
blessed over and over by you. So thank you everybody for being here. Let me just check in one last time. Jan says, yes, ask, what is the core of my suffering? Yes. Sonia says, free the boogeyman. Yes. Nancy says, I think of this quote from a movie. What if there is is as good as it gets? What if this is as good as it gets? Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
good.
think of Daryl's story with the sergeant with the leg, I forget how you said it, but it was like, and now, my leg has been amputated and uh, I'm okay now. It's like however you said it, I don't remember the
Yeah.
exact verbiage, but it was like, wow, what a what a way to make that report. Um, yeah. What if this is the new
New
reality?
normal. Yeah.
New normal. We got used to that after the pandemic. The new normal,
Yeah.
right? Oh my goodness. Okay, everybody. Well, um,
Mm.
join us. I hope you will pop into the Zoom room now, hydrate, nourish, and come back in there in about 20-ish minutes. And we will talk about kindness is the way, and we'll take today's ideas and thoughts and further explore these stories. And Christopher has a lineup of light for us. I know this to be true. So join us in there. And everybody, if today's gathering has encouraged you, inspired you, helped you see something from a different perspective, brought the light into your morning, we invite you to support the ongoing work here at Unity Inspired Living. Your generosity allows us to continue bringing gifted speakers like Christopher and musicians like Mooney Star Music to this community, offering all the good stuff. And so thank you. Thank you for your generosity, because it has a ripple effect.
Yeah.
We don't always know where it will travel or whose lives it's touching, but it is touching lives. So
Mm.
thank you for being part of this community. Your presence, your generosity matter. You are the light. You are definitely the light. So as you step into this week ahead, may you have eyes that continue widening the scope, looking for the light and recognizing it when you find it, and savoring it too. And when life feels dark, and if that's your place right now, may you remember to ask, what else is possible here? What else could be here? And praying that everybody has the kindness enter your life that you didn't expect to receive, and in places you hadn't thought to look. So thank you for being here
Mm.
with us. We love you. We bless you. Until we gather again, shine on, bright beings of love. So grateful for your presence here. Thank you, Christopher Brown, for you. You are a light to us, and a blessing and a gift.
Peace, love, blessings. We will see you in the Zoom room right now. I will drop the link in the live stream feed. Mwah.
Mhm.